Hi, everyone. Mike White here. Welcome to this week's blog post. It's amazing. I interrupt my schedule to go out and do a training in Texas for the week, miss publishing a blog post for that week, first time in quite some time that I actually didn't pre-record one or have one and send it out. And so I take that time and I come back, and the interest rate market has gone, completely crazy. It's amazing how the volatility and how quickly things can move, and hopefully it's a lesson to many out there. I mean, for, I don't know, the last 6 to 8 months, we've spoken here quite a bit about my concerns over inflation and higher mortgage rates and rate volatility, and what that was going to mean to housing and real estate and the mortgage industry. And I've maintained the position, especially in these very volatile times with crazy rate fluctuations, that taking a position, if you and your clients like the rate, then lock the rate and the payment where they were comfortable. And it would serve as to avoid, unpleasant rises or rate fluctuations at the time they were going to lock, that may cause them either emotional or financial distress. And we've seen significant volatility almost on a daily basis, but sooner or later, the reality had to come that we were going to break out of the bottom of the interest rate market and start our way higher. And we've known that. We knew that we weren't going to stay in the twos. Eventually, things were going to have to start moving. We've talked about inflation, and I don't even want to get started about the Fed being behind the curve with its whole transitory inflation nonsense that they recently finally had to admit in front of God and country and the world that they were woefully incorrect on. And inflation is real, and it happens. And as always, it seems that the Federal Reserve, no matter who's in charge or who's doing what, is woefully behind the curve when many other people can look around and see things coming. And here we are. So the Fed is taking steps, and the markets are going to try to find whatever the new normal is. And volatility, again, as we've seen the last few weeks, continue, but the bias is toward rates going higher. And we can see since the beginning of this year, we've seen about a 200 basis point move in mortgage bonds, again, depending upon which coupon you follow. But let's just say, we'll give and take a little bit and say about 200 basis points since the beginning of the year. And it's put a lot of pressure. Obviously, we've seen opportunities for refinances plummet, but we've still seen a very strong purchase environment. And I think that's the hidden gem here that you need to be paying attention to, is that, yes, rates are going higher, but they're still well, toward the bottom of the scale. And I think the thing that we have to do as originators is put things into perspective. What's the reality behind rates moving from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4? And what does that mean to your client as far as payment goes, along with the increased cost of residential properties based upon your local demand? And I think loan officers, especially when I did my training last week, need to become more and more aware of their individual markets. Yes, national numbers have an impact on us all. We've talked about that before. But local markets is where we all live, and where most of us make a majority of our loans is in our own area. And you've got to take a look at, say, the cost of housing is going up. Well, that's inflation. Inflation is like that. Everything is going up. Gasoline's up 50%, food's up. Everything that you're looking at is up higher. What's the cost of living? And for us, obviously, you're seeing well, the cost of the house is higher, and now the interest rate to finance the debt is higher. But what do the numbers really shake out to be? And then compare them with the only other measurable that you have in your market that compares housing, and that's what's the cost of renting the same thing or a similar thing in that market. And what we're seeing is, in many areas of this country, when I check in with my clients, these rents are skyrocketing. We're seeing 25, 30, 50% rent increases. I see it in my backyard, just where I was in Texas last week, where we're seeing 25, 30% rental increases. And those increases are, again, right to the bottom line. And after all, when you think about housing, we all have to pay for housing in one way, shape, or form. And in this country, one of the ways that people are most comfortable is financing that debt with a 30-year fixed rate loan, because they like the security of fixing that principal and interest payment. Well, that principal and interest payment may have gone up, but they're locking in the price of their house, and they're locking in their principal and interest payment. As soon as they lock their deal and close their loan, they know at least that part is set for them. And that is something that they don't have to worry about going into the future. Now, certainly insurance and taxes certainly move, and obviously other things go up, but they all do. And whether you own a home or rent, inflation is a very real thing for all of us. But the one thing you can control is you can lock the price of where you live by buying it, and you can lock the cost of the monthly principal and interest payment by taking that 30-year fixed rate loan. And again, as a point of reference, use Google and print out some charts. And people who are freaking out that we've moved to, from 2 to 3 and 3 toward 4, yes, it's not as much fun as when rates were in the 2s, but it's also not 18.5% with 2 points. And if you think I'm kidding, go back to October of 1981, or 8% and 1 point in 2000 if you want to narrow the gap, or 6% in 2008, or even 5% in 2010. And you go, oh, well, that's still, 10, 12 years ago. Well, okay, let's speed it up. 4.5% with a half a point in 2018. And we were in that mid 4% range, as recently as May of 2019. So there was plenty of business, and people were ecstatic over those rates, and they were happy to pay those rates at that point. And yes, I know it's a few years difference, and everybody would rather pay 2.5 than 3.5 or 4.5. But 2.5 or 3.5 or 4.5 is still better than 5.5 or 6.5 or 18. Do I think we're going that high again? No, but all we have is history to look at and to compare and to say, here's where we are, and here is what we can do, and here's what the benefits are. Because again, buying that house, you lock in the price of that house, you lock in your loan, and you lock in your principal and interest payment for the next 30 years. And that's why people use 30-year fixed rate loans, because they don't like the idea of the payments going higher. So again, it's not where we were, but probably it's not where we're going. And it's certainly not where we once used to be. So always, if you have questions or comments, it's mike@imtcoaching.com. We're going to be talking about winning strategies through this spring buyer's market, and things that you can do, and things that my clients are actually doing right now that's working for them. Because the reality of it is, there's still very strong demand for people to own and buy where they live. And that's not dissipating anytime soon. So have yourselves a great week. Look forward to talking to you again real soon.